Hey, welcome back. We want to introduce to an organization that's committed to promoting the healthy development of Indiana children and youth. That's Indiana Youth Institute. Let's introduce you to our friend here, Tami Silverman, President and CEO of Indiana Youth Institute. Thanks for coming on the show today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
More than
We're
welcome.
glad you're here.
More than welcome. Well, we're honored to have you here, and we want to thank you for the work that you do for the Indiana Youth Institute. Can you actually share with our viewers and our listeners what Indiana Youth Institute is all about and what you've been doing for Indianapolis?
Sure. First and foremost, we exist really to serve all the other entities, all the other organizations that help kids. So when you think about a YMCA, a Boys and Girls Club, your after-school programs, your faith-based programs, coaches, teachers, counselors, if you work with kids, we are there to help you, to further your mission. And so I think it's kind of really unique. I worked in Illinois for a while, and there's not one of us there. So it's really one of those things that acknowledges that those groups that are working directly with kids are so busy with the day-to-day service that sometimes they need assistance with fundraising. They need assistance with board development. They need assistance with professional development. Maybe they don't have the latest and greatest information and research that's out there on working with certain issues. You know, we just did an issue brief on the impact of opioids on kids.
Right.
You know, they're not the primary users, but boy, are we seeing huge numbers of kids who are being negatively impacted. Those groups, because they're dealing with those kids, can't go out and do the research, can't go out and find those solutions. That's what we're there to help them even further their work a little bit further.
Well, and I want to wish you a happy November because I can't believe
you.
it's November, and it's also National Philanthropy Month. Is that right?
Absolutely.
And I know
absolutely.
that's something that you all really try and do is not only generate that in the community, but also get parents to instill that same spirit into their kids as well. So can you tell us about how you're trying to get that done?
You're brilliant. Yes, because you know what we've said is that's a practice. It's a skill. Philanthropy is a skill just like anything else, like playing basketball or soccer or a violin or a piano, and you have to start training it. And oftentimes we as adults think that you'll just kind of grow into it and inherit it, but really it's observed behavior. It's
Yeah, it
practice.
is. It's not the natural place that most people are regularly. I mean, it's a habit that you have to get into.
It is, but yet we found there are a lot of school groups that are teaching that, right? There are a lot of groups service clubs that have a service component, and so it can be learned. And there's also a whole bunch of kids out there that see other kids see other kids that are struggling or in crisis, and they want to do something. So instead of saying like, don't worry about it, that's a big person problem or that's an adult problem, say, let's think of a realistic way for a kid to help, right? If you've seen the hurricanes, maybe, we're not going to have kids going down there and helping with hurricane relief on the ground, but they can do a food drive at their school, if they're
a lemonade stand or whatever the case is. Sure.
So
Be careful of those lemonade stands. You got to have a permit to get a lemonade stand.
depends on the neighborhood and the county, right? Like
And
you
if
might
you,
be.
and if you get caught,
There's a couple usually in my neighborhood on any summer day, and they're cute. They make it. But I think really encouraging those kids to go on their own intuition if they want to help. We also work a lot with all these different entities, about 800 youth serving organizations in a year we will work with.
Oh, wow.
One of those is the Indianapolis Children's Museum, which we all know and is spectacular. They have an event coming up called the Power of Child Awards, and it's really for they're going to spotlight some kids who have done amazing philanthropic efforts. And so our goal is also to help promote that event and to help people to spark those ideas and innovations and say, if those kids can do it, maybe you can too.
that makes my heart so happy.
Absolutely.
That there are good little kids out there doing big things. I mean, that's
Huge things.
Yeah.
Huge thing. Well, and I'll tell you about a couple of them that they shared with us. Is there was a student who was, I believe, a junior in high school, and he was saving up for a car. And yet it became aware that he had aging family members that didn't know how to use the internet. We can probably all relate to what that looks like.
Right.
And so what he started, he took that money, and I think it was like $4,000, and started rehabbing computers and training seniors to email with their family members.
Oh,
And it's turned,
that's so nice.
isn't that awesome? And it's turned
Wow.
into a huge project that he's been able to sustain and to think about just fulfilling that need, seeing a need within your own family, addressing it, and then scaling it. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of that, we know that philanthropy.
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 Yeah, and children. Thank you. doesn't stop with children, because we know that parents and adults pay attention to children, and we take some of our marching orders if we see such a authentic want to give back to community. You better believe adults will get in line, because I mean, one, you don't want to be outshone, but at the same time, it brings you back to what's real and what's pure, and it kind of relights the pilot light sometimes.
You betcha, and genuine. When I talked about that hurricane relief, that actually someone at our office, his kids' schools had decided to do that, and they were having a little family gathering, and he has 3 little boys, cute as they can be, and who gave this little pitch on why it's important that we help with Hurricane Maria relief. And he said people were like, you betcha, how can I give? What can I mean,
take all my money.
Literally,
it was so genuine, and that heartfelt relation that sometimes I think when we're so busy working day to day, and we're so busy doing all the things that we do, and you stop, and sometimes you can overlook the people that are somewhere else that aren't right in front of you, and kids see that with such great clarity.
Well, and as adults, we know, we might invest time in something and it could fail, but when you're a kid, you don't know any better, so you want to try, and you're going to try until you get it done. So they're not bogged down by those failures and the fear and all of those things that adults usually are. So good job, little kids. Keep doing all your stuff.
It's inspiration for adults, absolutely. So your team has a column on youth I can't say it today.
Struggle bus.
Wow. Coming out in 4 days.
Philanthropy.
Thank you. You just say it for me.
Yep. Just point to me when you need it.
That's coming out in a few days, November 6th. So can you give us a preview of what that research is?
Right.
The philanthropic research. See?
That one's easier.
There you got it. It's really to say that there are those long-term benefits, that kids that start looking at the world around them and responding to that carries over. And there's decreased likelihood that they're going to engage in risky behaviors. So if you think about, if you have your kid doing a drive for a book drive for the local library, that's going to perhaps keep them from doing drugs and consuming alcohol, and it decreases teen pregnancy, it increases graduation rates, and it increases their likelihood to vote as adults, believe it or not. Isn't that amazing? So again, because it's that I'm engaged with my community, I know what's going on, I feel a sense of responsibility. And it makes sense when you stop and think about it, but sometimes you don't think about if we do this little activity, if we all go and volunteer together, and for little kids, they even said as little as setting up a bag where they put their clothes that they outgrow and then taking them with you to Goodwill to donate. It doesn't have to be those big projects. They can be little things, but they have big dividends.
Actually, those little things can, with the child's buy-in, is you're planting seeds of character inside them. So sometimes even the larger, more grandiose things, there's a bit of a separation from the kid. But if they can actually give of themselves, of things that they used to enjoy and play with, right, or some of their old clothes, and they literally take it down to like Bridge, or they take it down to Shepherd's or something like that, you're making those connections. You really are.
And particularly when they interact, sometimes, so they get to learn kids are kids, and that's one of our big philosophies at IYI is kids are kids. And our goal is for every Hoosier kid to reach their full potential. And that means a lot of different things for a lot of different kids across our state and across central Indiana. But the reality is it's really in all of our best interest, right? If every kid succeeds and thrives.
I want to touch on achievement gaps too. I know that's something that you all have been really focused on, is kind of identifying the achievement gaps, and then from that finding a solution and building up kids where they need to be built up. Can you tell us about the work you're doing in that arena?
Yes, we're very excited. We just participated in our first annual Race for Results report we released. We're the Indiana affiliate for the Kids Count Network, which is affiliated with Annie Casey Foundation. Lots of affiliations there, I know, but
I feel you.
It's like 6 different degrees of separate, but I got it. I think we're there.
We got it. So
nobody gave me props on that. I'm so sad.
I got it. So and we do a lot of data work. We release the Indiana Kids Count data book. We roll it up to the national. This one was kind of that next step forward where we said, let's break down those numbers and let's disaggregate the data by different populations. And let's take a look at how different groups of kids are faring in Indiana. And, for a lot of the people boots on the ground, it wasn't a surprise. But I think when you really look at the data, there's some challenges out there for us. There's some big challenges in those achievement gaps, particularly when you look at the proficiency in reading levels and math levels and what that looks like for kids of color and immigrant kids.
Wow.
Huh. Well, the IYI vision is that all Indiana children and youth will attain 5 critical elements of healthy youth development. Can you actually kind of go through those 5 critical elements for us?
Sure. And they're basic, right? It's what you think of, that they need to be healthy, obviously. They need to be well educated. They need to be safe. They need to be engaged. These are they need economic stability.
I don't see bacon on those 5
There's not
points.
bacon, but it could go into healthy if you can make the case for that.
I absolutely can justify that
Don't
case.
know how you would do that, so...
There's another show right there. All right. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Again, it's not one or the other. And I think that's where we also come into play in helping to connect some of those organizations. Maybe you have one that's really working on childhood obesity, but they're not connected to the education one. Well, if they're not, and the education entity is doing the after-school program, maybe they're not doing healthy snacks.
Right.
Maybe they're not. And so it's the connections, because if we can get them all connected, the impact's greater.
I also want to talk about an upcoming event that you all are a part of, the Because Kids Count event on November 14th. Can you tell us about that? Because it's here now. It's
actually a little later.
Oh,
the
is it?
date, yep.
Okay.
It's the 27th, 28th, and 29th.
Okay.
The registration date, the close date is the 14th.
Right.
There you got it. And so it is actually the largest conference in the state for youth workers. And so it's usually about 1,500 youth workers come together for all kinds of different trainings. Again, and it's things that we survey them and they tell us they want to learn about. Grit and the growth mindset. How do you take, when you hear kids that you say, gosh, these kids are just playing video games and they're lazy. How do we instill grit in the growth mindset?
Do you have a camera in my house?
It's a popular one, I'll tell you, throughout the
my
state. It's
gosh.
popular. It's the opioids. It is mental
absolutely.
health. It's, all of these topics run throughout the day. So it's really an intensive time where you can come and kind of get an infusion of the most updated information. You can also talk to your peers and hang out and get a little inspiration as well.
Sounds like a good event.
Got a lot of things going on.
A lot, always.
And thank you for manning the helm there, because like you said, in Illinois, they don't have
didn't happen.
They don't have anything like that.
Well, and I would just say kudos to the Lilly Endowment, because they actually envisioned us existing in the state and saw that need. So like so many things around Central Indiana.
Why don't you actually give some shout outs to some of the partners of your organization, some contributors that help on a yearly basis?
That would be, thank you for that opportunity.
Not a problem.
First and foremost, when you said manning the house, really, we have a spectacular staff. I have to say, we're a small but mighty little crew out there. And I hope, actually, I would invite you both to come as our guests to the conference and take a look at it, at least for bits of it, because it's amazing. And I can say that because I've only been there a little while, so I don't feel like I'm too much tooting my own horn, but it's a spectacular conference. And then there are all those partners. Lilly Endowment, the Pacers Corporation have been with us since day one. We all know, again, what they do for the community. Vectran, if you're not familiar with the Vectran organization and their community impact.
Yeah, they do some big things.
They do lots of big things, as well as some newer folks, TCU, Credit Union, Old National Bank, who's kind of new to Indianapolis and really is coming on strong and helping out a lot and really has a dedication to kids. I think those are some of the bigger ones. There's a whole list of them. In fact, we just went live with the whole conference book, so you can see what all the sessions are if you go to our website.
And you've got some great speakers lined up too, is that right?
Spectacular speakers on, and we kind of like to tease people into going and researching them, but Red Rubber Ball is really talking about how do you find your passion and how do you find your mission and what's your direction. We also have a woman who's speaking who was a foster child. And what her experience was. We know right now Indiana, I believe, is ranked second in the country for the number of kids who are being removed because of addictions. And so what is that experience like? I know.
Really?
We might be one. I hate to say, Brittany. It's tough.
That's really
heartbreaking.
tough.
It is tough. And so that's also our December column is talking about, we've been working a lot lately on figuring out what that looks like and what that impact is. And really, again, what we're learning is the current system that we have for foster care hasn't been updated in a long time. And so, for example, the reimbursement rates for daycare are very, very low. And yet the people that are opioid addicted are often young. And
Sure.
so that means there's young kids, right? And so even if you had the heart of gold as a family who might foster a family, if you're going to pay out of pocket for 3 kids for daycare, that's a really big ask.
Yeah, it is.
It's a really big ask. So lots of complex issues now.
Yeah.
Now, and in talking about opioids and foster care and all that, I think it's also important when we talk about the philanthropic efforts that, our kids in our state are amazing, and they'll just blow your socks off whenever you work with them and encounter them.
That's awesome work. Keep up the good work. How long has Indiana Youth Institute been in existence?
28 and a half years, I believe. I'm going
Rock
to
and
check
roll.
my, check our source.
Get a thumbs up in the corner. Okay.
Almost 30 years. So I know we're looking ahead to that already and saying, we really need to mark this milestone, because again, we're unique in the Midwest, most certainly, and there's really not that many folks around us like us around the country.
This begets a much larger conversation, but we're certainly going to lift up the show, make sure that our followers know about what you're doing, but how can other businesses help? How can our listeners and our watchers contribute? Because, we have a unique position on this show to be able to influence a lot of millennial mindsets.
Right.
And millennials are wanting to give back. They're wanting to find a cause. And my gosh, this is a perfect vehicle for that. So how can they help?
Sure, most certainly. I would say the easiest way is to go to iyyi.org and look on there, because there's a how to help button. And the other thing that we're talking
It's almost like I teed it up for you, right?
Yeah, it's almost
Right.
like you've been to the
Thank you.
website before.
and really also the idea is to think creatively. One of the things that we're talking a lot about is there's no one right solution, right? So we're also in the fun spot and the space to say, if you have a great idea on how to reach kids, come and talk to us about it. Maybe we can partner you with an existing organization. Because again, when you work with so many different ones, we had an individual who was an entrepreneur, young, who was she was doing like anxiety reduction in little kids from a food truck, if you believe. So she was going around to different schools.
Love that.
And talking to them. And, a lot of kids that live in crisis situations
Right.
have a lot of stress on their shoulders,
Absolutely.
right? And so their anxiety levels are high. And so she was doing like intentional breathing and yoga and all that, but from a mobile.
I love that.
Isn't that spectacular?
That's so smart to do
and
that.
so we were able to also talk to her a little bit about who might fund that, right? Like how might she connect to different, and she was already doing gangbusters on her own with some United Ways and YMCAs, but hopefully, we could help further that. What a great innovative idea. So again, if you just want to contribute and help and you want to volunteer or you want to donate time or money, let us know. If you also have one of those out there ideas that you're not sure how it might fly, talk to us about
All
it.
ideas welcome.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And if they revolve around bacon or pastries of any kind.
Then contact me about pastries.
All right, so parting thoughts for you to talk about where you are in your mission with Indianapolis. What would you say?
We've made a lot of progress, but clearly we know not every child is thriving. So what's the call to action? And I think that's where we need to really step up and say, rather than when we see all these things in the news, when we see these data points, to kind of don't disengage from those. Don't be overwhelmed. They are big, complex problems, but truly everyone, if you plug in, can make a difference. And to find where that is, and if you don't know where that is, reach out to us, reach out to the United Way, reach out to the Center for Leadership Development, reach out to and we'll connect you. We'll connect you.
Fantastic. Well, you can connect with Indiana Youth Institute on Twitter, Indiana_youth, as well as Tami_IYI.
Tammy with an I.
Tami with an I.
Thank you.
So there's 3 I's in there. On Facebook, Indiana Youth. You can also search on LinkedIn, Indiana Youth Institute, and the website, IYI.org. The November column for youth philanthropy. Oh, Lord. You're killing me. Is on November 6th, IYI.org/blog. You can be able to check out all that information.
Yes. Thank you so much.
You're
Thank
more
you.
than
Thank you for what
Pleasure.
you do. Really.
Well, keep us abreast of what's happening, because we certainly want to lift up in social and make sure that everyone's aware of your organization, because it's a huge factor in just the growth of a city, is to be able to And also, it demonstrates what the character of the city is
betcha.
by how they take care of their youth.
You betcha.
So
And we would love to connect you. We've had guests on this show, and I'm sure they're running through your head right now, too.
Absolutely.
Organizations that have been on this show that would be perfect to connect
Wonderful.
with you. So we will happily do that because we've had some great people on this show, and we want to get them
Thank
connected to
you.
you as well.
That's what it's all about, right? That we're all working together.
Excellent. All right.
Thank you.